The editor is where the bulk of your programming work will be done. Here you will select lights that you want to control and ultimately create a complete light show. The editor is divided into several areas. Like many of the apps in ShowXpress, we have file management here at the top of the screen. It's important to note that the files in the editor are referred to as scenes. You can create a new scene, open an existing scene, save, or delete. Note the DMX and 3D buttons. If you have a DMX interface attached to your system and you're controlling live fixtures, you'll need the DMX button to be on or green. This tells you that DMX data is being sent appropriately. And for now, we want to see our work in the visualizer. So we just want to make sure that the 3D button is green. And we'll turn off DMX. The triangle here is a play button to play through the steps of whatever scene is currently loaded. More on that in a minute. Here we have our pan and tilt, RGB, CMY area where we can control pan and tilt position as well as choosing colors that get mixed. This becomes active when a fixture with those parameters are selected. The faders allow for direct control over a fixture's various parameters. Each fader represents a parameter for whatever fixture is selected. This is the 2D view, which gives a very simple graphic depiction of all the fixtures that you've previously configured in setup. Use this area to select the fixtures you want to work with. You select a fixture by clicking on it. If you're on a Mac, you can click while pressing the Command key to choose multiple fixtures. If you're in Windows, that would be the Control key. You can also click and drag to select multiple fixtures. And you can create groups. The purpose of grouping is to be able to select multiple fixtures at the same time by just pressing a key on the keyboard. For example, let's say all the fixtures that I have selected right now, let's say I wanted to have a shortcut to get to all those fixtures instantaneously. What I'll do is I'll select them, come over to the group area, right click, choose add new group, give it a name and a shortcut key, and click apply. And now you can see that we've got our demo right there. If I press the Z key, those fixtures get selected. This middle area is our step area, and probably the most important section of this interface for programming. Scenes are made up of any number of steps. You can program looks by making changes to lighting parameters, manipulating the faders. You can then create a look in one step, make a change in the next step, and so on. And when a scene plays, by pressing the play button, the editor moves from step to step and the lights respond accordingly. So in order to demonstrate how ShowXpress programming works, I'm going to create a very simple scene with just one fixture. Notice that when I click on the fixture, the parameters show up here in the fader area. And here we have our step area with only one step in it so far. For our first step, I really just want to set up the scene. All that really means for me is that I want to turn on the shutter, and I want to focus the pan and tilt so that the light is exactly where I want it to be right off the bat. So I'm going to have to turn up the dimmer just so that I can see where I'm going. And we will position the light accordingly. Let's say that's where I want to start. We're all set. I'm going to give it a color here. Go for that purple. And I'm going to bring down the dimmer for our first step. And here's where I can add steps. But before I do, I want to make sure that this first step is very brief, because as I say, all we're doing is setting up the scene. So we're going to make that 1 second. You could put a name for any given step right here. So to create a new step, we simply click on this. And one thing to note is that every step maintains the parameters of the previous step. So in other words, if the duration is 1 second, the next step you add is going to be 1 second. So we are going to come back to 5-second duration. And notice also at the bottom here, we have the transitions for each step. And what we want is a smooth transition. We want to move from one pen and tilt position to the next so that we have movement. We don't just want to quickly go from one spot to the next. So in order to make that happen, we're going to have to click on this symbol here to go from step to crossfade. You don't have to worry about that for the shutter. And so now any subsequent steps will incorporate this crossfading. But first, before we do our next step, let's bring up our light. And step 3, we'll move that. And another step, move it over here. And one more for good measure. And there you go. And now for our very last step, I'm going to fade it down so that we're in black once more. Let's take a look at each step. If you click on each step, you can see the location, you can see the parameters of each light that's in play. And of course, you could easily have every single light in your arsenal doing various things as you go along. You can also layer scenes, but that's another story. Let's take a look at what this scene looks like if we just play through all our steps. And there we are. ShowXpress will loop this scene just so that you can see it repeatedly. We'll look in our next video how to incorporate a scene such as this into a light show by using the application Live.